All right. Hey, everybody. This is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. Today we have Bobby Burrell on, and he's a hockey historian. So I want to kind of pick his brain on what he has to say on vintage hockey and whatever else goes on. So, Bobby, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ryan. Yeah, I just call myself a hobby historian because I do the non-sports and I have done baseball and football. Not to any 10th degree, but I just cover it as a hobby. But specifically hockey, you're correct. Yes.
Do you we'll just kind of play this by ear,
Sure.
and there's a lot of questions I have, and I really kind of like want to see what you have to say about vintage hockey and basically the behind the scenes, if you will, on the production of the cards and the companies too. So,
Sure.
um,
I'll take that chance.
yeah. Oh, so before we do that, do you don't collect vintage cards, do you? Or
No, I collect more of the information. I have had all the vintage cards over the years. It's just that I don't keep them. I like three-dimensional collectibles more.
okay,
Stuff from my era and even older. I just really like stuff that I can see on display. I don't really like having an album to go to. And I like things that are rarer, opposed to, there's how many Gretzky rookies? Okay, there's
right.
20,000 out there. So I like something that has a lower count of maybe four or five or one known kind of thing. And original advertisement and that kind of stuff is really something that catches my I guess as we evolve, I was into wrappers and packs and boxes, and I'm still into those, but you graduate every 5 years, it seems, into something new that stimulates you, and that's what's happened to me over the years.
Yeah, and for me, my collecting journey is really kind of switched to different sports, and I was mainly into baseball, and
Mhm.
now I'm into well, right now I'm into cricket and golf and tennis, and now
Mhm.
hockey, um, and so I want to kind of learn more about the players and the just the hobby in general and the cards themselves.
Mhm.
So this is really kind of like another education for me. So and it's one of the reasons why I started a YouTube channel as well to learn from people like you. And I do have a couple of questions here. So you had sent me a lot of information, and there's so much. There's so much, which is great. I'm not complaining at all.
It's really key information I'm sending you, not you know something overwhelming. I'm just sending you key pieces that are historically significant opposed to anything else. Key points in between tops and OPG or Canadian issue versus American issue or North American issue in general. So those little things are kind of important going forward because a lot of people collect OPG and tops, or like some Canadian sets or American sets that weren't issued in their country, what have you. So
Yeah, I think it's what it's doing is it's kind of connecting the dots, uh, so you're getting an overall picture instead of something very small, if that makes sense. Um,
yeah, we tend to stay in a vacuum when we get into just one sport and focus on that. And to broaden your horizon, once you satisfy that, you get your fill, so to speak. You kind of branch off into other things. You kind of say, That's kind of interesting. I'm gonna look into that," and you kind of go off onto your little lanes and have some more fun.
yeah,
It's re-stimulating yourself is really what you're doing, because it can
I,
get stagnant at times.
I think so. I think so. Um, there's a bunch of articles that you sent me, which I thought was really interesting, and a few of them was actually the top's quarterly reports from 1974, 75, and 76. And Tops is really a very fascinating company that I don't think that we have really kind of dived into all that much. It's past, especially when it comes to other countries that it's been in.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and a lot of it is like the numbers part of their quarterly reports, which can really, quite frankly, bore people.
Yes.
But there's another portion of this is that they're in well, let's see, they're in I think Ireland. So
Ireland.
Yep.
UK. Um, I know
Australia.
Australia. Yeah, I don't think they made it to New Zealand, but there's a couple other countries, Eastern European, I think, somewhere out that way too. They got out that way.
And definitely in South America as well.
Yes.
And I started to notice that a lot of their the cards themselves, they looked a lot. Like, I guess when you're looking at cricket cards, for example, or soccer cards, or football, is what they said.
Mhm.
Um, the designs are really kind of taken from like our sports here. So for like 1959 tops, say those kind of designs are um, they're rehashed, they're repurposed.
Plagiarism is alive and well. We were always trying
Really,
to shortcut everything, and O-Pee-Chee did that too, or Top, so to speak. Uh, they reused in '71. They would reuse a design of a hockey player that a hand-drawn design, and they would reuse it. Like on the '71 Bazooka, they reused the '65 scene with the pucks, and then you go to the Top's what was it, the test issue. That was a reused player from earlier on too. So it's interesting how they kind of borrowed some ideas.
yeah. I wonder how the company set these things up with these companies from other countries. You know, um,
Yeah, well, Canada's different, I think, in a sense. I think we have to separate Canada and the United States as being very different, as because we know that Top Peachy was his own company, where Tops had the licensing for most everything. So either it was sent up here, produced and sent up, or it was given the rights to us, and we would go our own way and obviously pay Tops their percentage for what they, you know, having the license would retain. Now, in the other countries, I'm not too sure. Although the UK is pretty, I don't know how they were with gum cards. It doesn't seem like very much, but they were very big in tobacco cards. So they had their own artists. They had their own stuff going on there. So, but I think a lot of it was just a rehash. Obviously, with Kennedy had to change the backs for the French and English from the
yeah,
any issue that came up. So you can always tell if it's an O-Pee-Chee because just read the back; it'll be bilingual. Whereas in America, if it's just you, in the United States issue would just be one language, English.
yeah. It's so that the tobacco part really is very interesting to me, between America and Canada, and
Uh-huh.
how a lot of these say the 1911 C-55, um, were those actually, so there's a few questions here I have on that, because I did read your articles on it, which actually I thought were really good on that stuff. The Imperial Tobacco Company was
Mhm.
it was from Britain, or was it from Canada?
No, it started out. It kind of amalgamated into the ITC, or the Imperial Tobacco Company, but it branched off. It started from England, Ireland, and then you had the British American Tobacco, and then they kind of melded together, and then they started bringing in all these other companies. So that's when ITC started for Imperial Tobacco of Canada in 1908. So from that period on, they were fully operational. It started with Topsail PG. It's under another ownership, like everything else is, and that's just a division. It runs its own company, and obviously they get paid whatever for owning the company, dividends and what have you. So
Okay. Um, and so with trying to think here. With the sweet cap postcards, were they issued in tins at all?
yeah, I kind of made that question. It was almost tongue in cheek to a degree. We When I sent you that information, what I had determined and found in a book about the Imperial Tobacco Company, written by through the archives of the Imperial Tobacco Company, is that 20% of the sales um, of tobacco back in Canada were 20% were only cigarette. Most
Okay.
of the lion's share was either pipe tobacco or cigars. Now you had the church coming in there fighting the tobacco because they didn't. Tobacco was somewhat kind of new in that sense, where smoking a pipe was acceptable, or a cigar, um, and the church was fighting that, and it was bad for you. Temperance was a big issue, so you know
Right, right.
that really stopped but smoking a pipe seemed more intellectually acceptable at that time, or what have you, or a
Yeah,
big old cigar, because cigar has been around a lot longer than cigarettes. So it kind of went that way. um, the 20% was just there. Now, UK, 50% smoked cigarettes. United States, 50% at that time smoked cigarettes. And then you got into the Canadian part, 20% national cigarette sales. And of that 20%, there's a small percentage also that actually most people would roll their own. It was a lot cheaper. It was a 4 to 5 to 1 basis cost point difference. So every pack was 10 or 15 cents. Depends on the quality and what have you, whether it was imported or not in Canada. So most of the people smoking those in the packs, it was a premium. The bourgeoisie would smoke those cigarettes, whereas the regular guy just roll his own and smoke his own because it was like, 25%, 20% of the cost. So,
yeah, it was people.
so were the cards at that time a premium, a super premium? And I think
That's a good question.
that is the question, because we
Yeah,
don't know. We can take a step back in time. We can look at a few records and some information, but we can't really say. But I would say, so to answer your question in the long form, because I'm sorry to getting around to it, but I sort of had to introduce that part of it. So if you're getting a card in a premium item, that costs, 10, 15 cents, which where the regular guy's just getting, he's getting it for next to nothing, was the tins of 50 or even 100, would they hold something? Like, I can see the regular tobacco. You didn't get that, but if you buy the packs, hey, we'll give you a card, baseball player, football player, whatever, hockey. Or if you buy the 10, which is 50, that's like 5 packs or 100 packs, 10 packs. We're maybe going to give you something better. What is something better? What, they give you 5 cards roaming around in there, or would they give you a postcard? Maybe.
yeah. I I find it very interesting because, well, first off, tobacco cards in the United States, say the T206, about 1909, 1911 or so. One time tobacco was banned in the United States for a short period of time.
Mm.
Um, and then, yeah, well, I'm not tobacco. The cards were banned, right? So between
Oh,
yeah, yeah, sorry. So between 1896 and
I thought it was
19,
prohibition for tobacco. I was thinking, hey, that's cool.
yeah, and then in fact, you know what? Tobacco was banned up in New York. It was banned, and then other places it
All
was banned.
regional, sure.
Yeah, so you had in about 1905 or so, it was banned in New York, and some people, especially women, were being arrested for smoking tobacco. And
Wow.
yeah, so
So why were the cards banned then?
because as the Internal Revenue Service had said, the commissioner of the Revenue Service had said in 1908 that they were issuing scantily clad photos of women.
Oh, the risque cards. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Mhm.
it was just the fact that they decided that we can't have this anymore. There's a morals thing, and they said that's it, no more
So did they
packages or
encompass all
prizes.
cards, or was it just the risque
It,
ones?
it did. It encompassed everything.
Oh, sad.
Yeah, yeah, and then so I had read the statute which that was involved in, and then
Huh.
it was brought back in 1909, so that you could have, or at least late 1908. So then everything in 1909 had changed. You had a copyright law, the 1909 Copyright Act, and then you had the Personal Privacy Act, which actually was instituted in New York first in 1903, and then in 1909 they had to, like, basically what happened. And I'm wondering it too, if maybe you know this, in regards to hockey, but um, for every ball player, a sports writer had to go out and get the signature of the ball player to basically acquiesce to his likeness on a card. So I'm wondering if that was also true. Probably not though, but I wonder if it's also true with the hockey players as well.
Well, as you know, there's some divergence between baseball and hockey cards being issued. Up here, they paid the owner for the rights, whereas in the United States they paid the player for the rights. So you would get all the team. But going back to the tens, we're changing the game there. There is something interesting that so if we go back to the C56, the 19 the early cards there. Um, there's two cards in there who they have advertisement backs. They have written, you know, this gentleman, he owns a laundromat, or he owns something, a tailor store, and I found that interesting that they would write that on there. And I was just wondering, maybe there is something. What do I get for being on your card, kind of thing? Well, we can
Right.
promote your business a little bit or something. Maybe there's people. So it seems like it was individual because they all didn't have that. But then again, not all had businesses at that time. So, but that always creeped into my head as being one of those little. Okay, I don't know anything yet, but at least it's there. So maybe there was something, but I think it was just handshakes. Maybe it was a little bit of notoriety on their side, so maybe they were doing them as a service. You know.
It could be. I'm not sure that they gave them money. They may have because for the Honus Wagner, the T26 Honus Wagner, I think the sports writer gave Wagner $10. So that may in fact have been what they had given him was a $10 bill for their likeness,
Hmm.
and as that's happened at least twice that I'm aware of. Once with Wagner, and then I got an Olympian named I think Porter, J.W. Porter, or definitely his name is Porter. He actually sued uh, the um, the American Lithograph Company in 1910 because he said that they did not have permission to have his likeness on a card, and he lost his case.
Oh,
And
really?
he did. He lost his case,
Hmm.
and so which is kind of funny because why did Wagner successfully have his card pulled when Porter didn't? And
Well, you
that's
remember Wagner's name, but you didn't remember Porter's name. Maybe that's the reason.
that's probably why. That could be why. Porter's kind of a obscure athlete now,
Yeah,
so that could be too. And let me just say hello to some of the
sure.
guests we have here. Tony Sensei Domino 15, thank you very much. You have Pavel. Hopefully, I'm saying this right. Pavel Frankis, and then Chris from Stories in Cardboard. Guys, thank you so much. Um, let's
I've
see.
seen
We
Chris
have
before on this show. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a great show. He's really good, especially with football.
Sports card dad. Who's he?
Oh, that's Dustin. Hey, Dustin, how you doing, buddy?
What's happening?
Yeah, that's crazy. Let me see. Howie Morenz, Hobie Baker.
Oh,
That's a
wow.
great name. Yeah,
Hobie Baker's very famous. Frank McGee.
yeah,
Right, Frank McGee. Yeah, those are
yeah,
big names.
yeah. That's great. That's great. And then so there was something too that I saw a package of Derby cigarettes, and I thought that was really kind of interesting because in 1908, 1909, there's a card issued of two basically the baseball of the Athletics and the Giants, and it was believed that Derby cigarettes was from New York, and never it was from issued from the American Tobacco Company, but it never left New York. So there looks like maybe there's a connection there between Derby cigarettes and the Imperial Tobacco Company.
I would say I know. I was looking for ads, and I know Derby went back quite a ways. Quite a ways. Turn of the century for sure. Right there.
Yeah.
I think I even saw an ad as early as 1905, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. It's really interesting too. Just just because how rare those particular cards are. And it looks like they had originally said that that particular Derby cigarettes set was from 1909, and it turns out to be more like 1913 or so.
Mhm.
And this is the one thing about the hobby which I really love is that um, we're still finding new cards that were issued over 100 years ago.
Or correcting dates.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of this stuff is from our hobby founders or pioneers, if you will, and there are a lot of sets that they didn't know about during their lifetimes.
Hmm. And we're
Yeah,
just finding out about them now, some of them too, which is very interesting. But I have to claw back to, we talk about gum companies and what they did and all these other big, where these cards, the big cards, because they're worth a lot of money. But back then, they're very simple, small companies. Gum companies, you worked there, you made less than minimum wage. You were just, it was low end of the totem pole for a lot of them, unfortunately. You just worked there. It was just a gum company. But
yeah.
the
It didn't.
cards are so revered today, but we have to take it back to that time period. They're just selling gum. And tobacco's the same thing. I believe that because there was a lot of tobacco stores, I'm very sure that, say, hey, Derby, let's just use Derby, and it's only New York. The guy goes, hey, one of the salesmen goes, hey, we'll make some cards. You promote Derby, give him one of these cards. So they maybe not weren't necessarily in the packs, but they may have been a handout promotion.
Yeah.
We
There
don't
was
know.
yeah. There's a lot that we don't know, and we're still trying to figure all this out, try to piece everything together.
Yeah.
And there was an interesting small tidbit of an article that I had sent you on Parkhurst from August 16th, 1952, and it's not the first year for Parkhurst, right? So Parkhurst was 51.
Well, the first year officially for Parkhurst was 1948, and
Okay,
then they slowly got into the cards in 51 too.
okay.
Hockey's a
Um,
hyphenated year. You say 52. They won the Stanley Cup in 52, but it is 51 two seasons. So it's sort
yeah,
of like
because
basketball's the same way.
yeah, and so they said that they were issuing 700 packs per minute, and it was they were sold with soft drink powders, and that they employed 100 workers, and that was at the National Post from Toronto. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Well, on the back, is there not advertisement for that powder? I forget the name of it right now. Uh, yeah, it can't come to me. But on the back of the cards, is there not say purchase um, that powder?
Let's see. I have so right now I have a 53. So I don't have any 51s.
Yeah, it's
50.
only on the 51s.
Okay.
Well, not for
So
hockey, but for other sports. I think the baseball.
okay. So this is actually says George Armstrong, and I didn't realize what a great player this guy is until I started looking into him. And so it's a lucky premium card
Hmm.
for looks like a camera.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
It's interesting that year that they did the regular backs and then they had the premium backs. So there is two of each card. And then there was a time when they were disregarded as nobody wants the premium back. Then it kind of came that there were so many regular backs and fewer premium backs that everyone started chasing the premium backs. And then, then the pop report went up. And it was really interesting how things changed in the last, 10 years in that regard. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, they offered some great. George Kennedy was always offering premiums. His stuff was in cereal, the packs. He did a lot of stuff. He wasn't just focused on distribution to just to general stores. He was really trying to get it everywhere. So
do you have a preference on those particular cards on the 53s or
54, I like the artwork starts to get a little bit better. Because 51 to 53, it's still a little primitive for my liking. And I'm really about aesthetic. So I really enjoy a better looking card. Some of them are a little bit early. You know, if we take it back to the C series of hockey cards, you know, you have the C55, 56, and 57s. You know, the 57s are a real portrait picture of the person, which I appreciate more than I do of you know, hand drawn artwork of a person. So,
Right, right.
so I have the, you know, that's an actual picture going back to 1910. We have very few pictures of these people, so those really document those, especially in hockey, those stars, and I appreciate. And it's such a harder set to find, that C57, and most of the, you know, 32 of them I think were used from the Sweet Capital postcard, the same photos. So it's a really great set, and I think the popularity of it is kind of low considering. You know, everyone's about C55 and Vesna, but you know, it's
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
greatest looking Vesna, but the Vesna and the C57 looks amazing. Like it's a
It
great
it
real picture.
it does. Um, were those were printed in Canada?
Yes.
The C57?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
you know, that's well, C57s, yes, for sure. It was the C55s that we're all questioning here. So were they
Okay.
printed in England or were they printed? And so we've really never satisfied that. The article that I wrote, I think I put it on Sports Collectors Daily if you want to go read it. It just kind of goes through my breakdown of the information and giving a few hypotheses and making you lean not one way or the other, but you can determine what you want from that. But I'm just feeding you the information. I do make a few suggestive, you know, just from breaking down the information. These are obvious questions. So that's where I kind of left it. It wasn't fact, but it made you lean certainly one way opposed to the other of what we used to think. You know, things in the hobby always they tend to not change. You know, it's hard to change somebody's opinion once they've been, you know, convinced of that opinion for such a long time. So
Right.
we're just kind of go forward trying to suggest better things, and people get, you know, like I said, they dig in their heels, and they just want to be right, but they're not right because they didn't really do the research. They read a few articles and they have a
Right.
personal, you know, stake in it, maybe because they own the cards, so they're not willing to be open-minded, where I have to be open-minded and we want to be
I
wrong.
I completely agree with that. I completely agree, and I've been in the hobby for a long time where I've seen this play out, you know, time and time again. Not everything is set in stone, right? So it takes a long time sometimes to try to get people to switch over to new information.
Hmm.
And I kind of want to blame Beckett for a lot of things.
Poor Jim.
Yeah, he gets blamed a lot. You know, I love Beckett magazine. I grew up with it, but the one thing that I noticed that was incorrect was on the 1958 Bowman baseball sets, where they kept on insisting that was it Phil Rizzuto, his rookie was in that set, and Yogi Berra as well. And Rizzuto's rookie is actually a 1941 double play, and then Berra's rookie is in the 1947 tip top, but they never changed that. And I'm going back to what you said is that collectors probably have really financial gain for that card to be a rookie of Rizzuto's from 1948, or even Sammy Baugh. So Sammy Baugh's actual rookie is a 1937 Dixie Lid Premium, not a 1948 Bowman.
Oh, the
But
Dixie Lids, yeah. I do
yeah,
like. I wish we did hockey with those. I really like those,
that would have been incredible. That really would.
especially with ice cream. You know, it's like hockey ice. Come on,
Yeah.
poor
Uh,
guys. We get everything
so
wrong.
Chris has a really interesting comment here. Bobby, are there elect premium cards for all the cards in that set? And I think he's talking about the 54, right?
The 54. There is. I think for every card. I'm almost sure of that 100%. I can't tell you right now. I've been working on so many different write-ups. I just you lose some of that information. That your
Yeah.
recall is not as good as it because I've been delving into some 20 stuff and it's just, you know, taking most of my time. The lucky premiums. I almost say yes. I would have to say yes.
Okay.
I
I
could
don't know.
I
I've
could
never
bring up
seen.
my list and tell you in 2 seconds, but I almost think so.
I haven't seen all of the cards, and those sets.
There's
So
only a few different premiums anyways on them, and I think, well, maybe it's only 32 of 50. 60. Hmm, can't remember now. I can't be accurate, so I won't say. We'll leave it at that.
okay, yeah, I agree with this, Tony. I like Beckett too. Did you guys have Beckett up in Canada?
Yeah, yeah,
Or-
we would have access to it. It's a little
Okay,
more expensive with the exchange difference, but for the most part, yes.
Beckett was really a great magazine, and they really kind of set a lot of hobby standards and pricing and condition, which I think has really kind of gone by the wayside now, just because of the grading companies, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
it's all due to money and just other stuff, which I'm not even sure. But yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, was there anything you wanted to talk about specifically?
no, I started looking up the thing while you're talking there. No, I actually have some new information. I'm just gonna just lay it out a little bit. I think I sent you a little bit. I'm still working on it. It may take a long time, but I just want to kind of drop it in your hat. And there's a lot of baseball people out there for sure that might find this a little bit interesting. Is what I have found is the Maple Crispet baseball, and there was hockey. It was 1924-5, the hyphenated year, and then the baseball came after it, which we documented. It was 23 for the longest time, and then I read the back of a baseball card and it says include the hockey and the baseball. I said this is not 23; it's got to be 25. How can it be? You can't step back in time. So I was reading that the Maple Crispet Company, and there's something else. Oh, okay, I'll go forward. The Maple Crispet Company came out with a set of cards in 1924-5 for the hockey, and then baseball was released. Now, Maple Crispet Company, actually, I found out that they went bankrupt in some time, well, maybe during when the baseball cards were coming out, and
Oh
then they
well,
went, yeah, which is very interesting because how are they going to do redemptions? Now,
right.
not every company just goes out of business and they shut the doors and sell the equipment. They were continued on. So, in July of that year, a company that we know quite well actually bought the Maple Crispet Company. And you know the name of that company?
Was it Gaudi?
It was
What was it?
O-P-G.
Oh, Peachy.
O-P-G. I know, floored. I'm sitting here going, they bought them out. So
Hmm.
they, in part, if not directly involved in distribution around July, because I'm thinking, when did baseball cards kind of come out for what time of the year would they come out? Like in Canada, we don't know, but what in the United States, do you ever figured out that when they would be released? Would it be April, May, or June, July?
For baseball,
Yeah.
usually April,
So right
or
at the beginning of the season.
right at the beginning, if not a little bit prior.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what
Well,
they used to. Yeah,
were there less games played back in that time period of the 20s when they would be, the 182 games now or something?
there
So,
were.
like the hockey season's shorter because it started in sort of December to March. It wasn't so long as now. It's 80 games. Back then, it's 42 games, so it's half the size. I don't know about that, and that might change the date of issue in a certain way. I'm just wondering. I'm
Yeah, there
asking.
were there were fewer games. I
So,
forget
would they
how.
start in April? Would they start more maybe in May and run till October?
No, usually let's see, April. Usually about April 14th, tax time.
Okay.
Is usually when they'd when they'd start baseball,
Okay.
and then yeah. So I forget the exact amount of games that they'd play, but
Okay.
it'd be a full season lasting until October or maybe November, right? For the
So
the
we
whole.
can really put O-Pee-Chee sort of at least in the still issuing to at least providing redemptions at that point in July. I think it's sometime in July they purchased them, early July. So they had to be involved. So they own Maple Crispet at that point in July,
Okay,
and nobody else can do anything. you know, the one part is there was another company called there was a Maple Crispet company, and there was also another one called the Maple. Uh, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time on this one. Okay, there was another company that was rivaling them, and it was under the same name. It was called the Molasses Crispet Company. We know this because there were some hockey cards found. They're not the black and white regular ones. They were on blue stock, green stock, orange stock, very different. And only a small handful have been found. Funny part is the guy who owned that sat on the board of the Maple Crispet Company. He sued O-Pee-Chee. O-Pee-Chee sued them for patent rights. And so there's a lot of stuff going on in between this time of them getting taken over. So why did these cards come out? And the funny part, it says Molasses Crispet, but they're Maple Crispet. It's just the most unusual thing. So trying to parse this all together has been difficult because if O-Pee-Chee took over, it's kind of a simple story at that point. But now this ties in and they're fighting each other. And it's just amazing what went on back in the 20s. We're thinking, business as usual kind of thing, but there is so much more. And that O-Pee-Chee in the 20s is coming in and rivaling and taking and buying over companies. Because O-Pee-Chee's business back then in the 20s was popcorn. Popcorn was a very big thing, and satchels of popcorn. So they sued each other. The other gentleman who owned that, his name was, oh boy, he had a really interesting name, both first and last, Adolf Epstein. If you're going to be saddled with a name, that's kind of the two you don't want in today's
Right. Yes, yeah.
So that's why I couldn't forget his name. It was too easy. And it's funny what he has going on against O-Pee-Chee, and he's not even incorporated. He's not even a business at that point. Like, it's very unusual. So O-Pee-Chee is sort of part of Maple Crispet, which is crazy. I'd say more part of the baseball part rather than the hockey.
So I do have a few of these Maple Crispet cards, and
Favorite?
unfortunately I don't have them here with me. But what I do know about that set, I think the Casey Stengel in the baseball
He's the
is
short print number 15.
And I think there are a handful of cards.
In the set?
No, for him, for Casey Stengel.
Oh, I don't know the pop report on that. I know that I'd have to say the rarest short print is the Sprague Cleghorn for the Maple Crispet. It's, everyone talks about the Burt Corbeau, but Sprague Cleghorn is so tough. He's probably the toughest. It's amazing how much press something gets. That's the William Patterson said is the Burt Corbeau is the short print. Well, you take the Maple Crispet, that is the true short print. And the Stengel, how many you said? Like 3 or 4 known, whatever.
Yeah, it's under 10 at least.
There's more found of that than there is of hockey. Isn't that amazing? Because I think there's 3 known of maybe 3 known of the short print for hockey. So it's really interesting, very interesting that you would have more of the Stengel than we would have of our short. That I don't know why that works out, but regardless. Maybe they're going through a trying time. Maybe the hockey wasn't issued very well. There was only 4 or 5 teams issued anyways. It wasn't like the whole league was issued. Very different time. And everybody's jumping in. It's 1924. It's like the 33 gum. You have 4 or 5 companies coming out at the same time. Same thing with hockey. You have like 5, 6 companies come out in 1924, 5, 123. But most of them all in that early stages, and very few survived that.
Yeah, it's so in 1933 we had the quote unquote Big Bang.
Yeah,
and
so
baseball.
You had it too.
Yeah.
Why 33? Because we have 4 hockey sets released in 1933, not even including the Sports Kings, which had hockey couple.
I was thinking of that too. I was wondering why all of a sudden, but in 1928, Fleer came out with a bubble gum, which worked because for a very long time they were.
It was the official bubble gum guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. They had a very difficult time trying to come up with the correct formula for bubble gum and a chewing gum. In fact, so they've had chewing gum for hundreds of years, if not 1,000 years, but they kept on kind of like fixing the formula to see if it would last longer, if the flavor would be the bubble gum itself, the bubble, right? So in 1928, Flair basically came out with a new formula, and so that's not all that long after that you had a big bang, if you will. And I think you also had new printing technology too in the late
True.
1920s and especially in the 1930s with Gaudi. You
Yes,
know,
especially the 30s.
yeah. So
Well, I always said that it was a great salesman for a printing company that went around, and that they all didn't have the epiphany to start putting hockey cards in the gum in 1933, 34. So it's interesting.
yeah, I kind of think it's right then and there, and like the 1933 when Gaudi really it spiked, and you had over $1 million in sales for that company because of you had, well, not only the baseball set but the hockey set in Canada, which was Worldwide Gum, which in fact right was Gaudi or split off
Mhm. Yeah.
of Gaudi. Can you refresh me on that one?
On the Worldwide Gum?
Yeah.
Yeah, Worldwide Gum, they started out in Montreal, and then they were just it was sort of the O-Pee-Chee Tops thing, very much similar to that. Tops owned everything, and it was just a Canadian counterpart. Uh, so but they ran their own ship. They did what they wanted to. Obviously, they did special, different um, promotions and cards and what have you. They copied obviously what was happening in the United States with hockey up here. So they did a nice run, and then they moved to Granby, Quebec in the later time, which is very interesting for a company to move in their first couple years, but maybe they were supported by the U.S. in a financial way. I'm not too sure about that. And then we get into the 49, the Old Boy, because Old Boy has been around for a long time. Prior to that, wasn't it one of the staples for um, Gaudi down in the
It
States?
it was, I think
Was there any other premiums on the wrappers or anything for the Gaudi
for Oh
prior
Boy,
to, yeah, or anything Gaudi?
there yeah, there was, Gaudi was experimenting with a few different, chewing gums back in the early 1920s. Actually, I wrote an article, on the 1934 Gaudi set, in which I kind of explained this. Um, they had like a chocolate flavored gum, which doesn't
Mm.
sound all that great. I'm just guessing some of this stuff didn't really last.
But
They had
did they have any premiums on the inner wrappers or anything like that?
not not that I can think of off the top of my head.
So prior to 1949, in the Old Boy Ice Hockey Stars cards, are the wrappers actually on the inner part of the wrapper, they would have the name of the hockey player, a number from a set of 50, and a little bio on them, and they were issued in the gum packs, but they're not issued on the outer wrappers, so it had to be advertising on the box. But not only did they do hockey, they also did baseball.
Really?
Yeah, there's a few baseball that I have found that I've archived that I was waiting to find information that I never have. So we have and to be honest with the hockey players, there's very few of the rappers. There's been two finds. I had one find back in, I don't know, 2003, 4, 5. I can't really remember, and I found about maybe about 100 in total, but not a full set. And it took quite a few years to find the extra missing one, which was Richard and I forget the other player. And then there was just a recent find by a gentleman of more. It seems like they're found in groups, but they very rarely come in singles. The baseball, I've seen a couple on, I don't know if they were on eBay, and I didn't really want to buy them at the time because I was just not into baseball. I thought it was kind of cool, but if I would have known how rare they are, I would have bought them. Now there is no picture on them. I understand it's just writing. Regardless, we're in, pre, just post-war, the earliest post-war stuff. I'm very surprised that Goody United States didn't issue something similar in that regard. And it was Canada that issued baseball and on the
Yeah.
hockey.
Yeah, there's I'm thinking the National Chicle Company of Cambridge, Massachusetts had a set that didn't have, it was a football set that didn't have any pictures on it, and it was like a lucky game card or something like that. And
Okay.
I've seen a few of them. I've never really been into those cards just because there are no pictures of them of the players. And then again, National Chicken went out of business in 1937 too. So
Mm,
sometimes when companies are on the fritz, if you will, their cards can really kind of be short printed. And
mhm.
uh, I did an article on the 1926 Sports Co. of America, or Spalding Champions, and uh, those cards are quite rare. If you ever seen any, they cover all sports, and specifically baseball. But the owner of the company, his company went bankrupt, and I think about 1926, 1927. By 1928, it was completely gone. So this was actually before the bankruptcy laws changed. I think about 1933 or 34 or so.
I think there's a lot of difference between our countries in the laws that were passed.
Yeah.
I think we were lesser in that sense. There was the Canadian chickle too. They'd issued cards back in the turn of the century. Well, in the tens, twenties, yeah. It's amazing. There's so many small little companies. I think they were World War One cards.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
if you want to get some of those questions, that'd be great. We can maybe
Okay.
throw a few answers back to these
Yeah.
nice people
Uh,
listening.
So let me see right here. So Tony just
Well,
bought a pair of signed personal checks from a vaudeville and silent actress, Kathleen. That's very cool. That's pretty cool. And then let's see, Pavel.
let's hold his signature.
You want to go? Do you have any?
Art Ross, that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
There's a few. One of the main ones, obviously, Lord Stanley, Preston, which was the he donated the Stanley Cup to the league. So having one of him, but he was sort of a dignitary, so his name is found on a lot of different you know items because he was around doing everything. But he never actually even got to see a hockey game. He went back to England and just donated the cup, and that was it, which is surprising. But there's always a few key ones. Anybody from the turn of the century, a Vesna is always amazing if you find something like that. I heard he was illiterate, but there's a lot of different, wives' tales, so to speak, that you come around and you keep listening. Oh, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, or that he had 18 kids, or I don't know. There's a lot of stories out there, and I don't have enough time in my life to really delve into how many kids
Right.
he had or what have you. But yeah, good old autographs are really something. J.P. Bickle, the guy who started the Leafs. Everybody thinks it was Conn Smythe who actually built the Gardens. Well, no, it was J.P. Bickle. He was the financial guy. He put Conn Smythe up in front as the front man. I think what did Conn Smythe? I think he won $8,000 in a horse race or something like that, and they built the Gardens. It's like 8,000? No, it was it was millions. Don't worry. So J.P. Bickle, he's one of the main people for the Leafs. He bought the St. Pat's and named the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he was the main guy. He was on the board for 1950 when he passed away.
So he'd have a lot of autographs, a lot of signatures, right?
Here's a guy, one of the most amazing guys. Gold. He was the gold baron of Canada back in that time period. He did all the he was such a big guy doing. He was hanging out with everybody and down in New York and down the Florida, wherever. But he's very little. He always stayed in the background. He was never a guy who was up front. Very interesting, but very influential,
Oh, okay.
and highly regarded. But he just never came to the forefront of things. So he would put, okay, Conn Smythe, listen, we're going to do this. I'll get the financing. You do everything. So everybody sees the front end of the game, but they're not looking at the back end of the game. As we were saying, all the stuff that's going on behind is really the key stuff that went on, especially with Maple Leaf Gardens. The house that Smythe built, no, J.P. Bickle.
Yeah.
He
Wow.
was the main guy, and he was a multi millionaire at that time in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They even actually dedicated the Toronto Maple Leafs have a trophy. It's called the J.P. Bickle Trophy. It was started in 1953, and it's given to the outstanding Leaf of the year. But it's been given and not given, and you had Harold Ballard in there doing his little "I'm not giving the cup until the Leafs win." Yeah, well, it's your fault anyways. So there's a lot of mistreatment, and it's the most expensive trophy in the world. I think it's made of 24 karat gold with silver, and I think it was worth back in that time period in 1953 when it was made. It was I don't know, it's $25,000 in gold. I think
Oh,
if you
wow.
pursed it out now, it's like $250,000 for a trophy. I don't know any other trophies is worth that. Like in its melt value. I'm just saying, you know. So
So,
and then it was
wow.
stolen, or people stole some pieces from it. There's a long story. There's a great history. The Leaf have crazy history, but it's really interesting. But I just wanted to get that pickle out there for people who think that Conn Smythe did everything,
Yeah.
and nothing to take away from Conn Smythe. Just saying.
Yeah, he does have a couple of cards, right? Conn Smythe.
Oh yeah, yeah, and he's
Yeah.
highly regarded. Sure,
Oh,
he's a
okay.
great military man. He did a lot for the Leafs. It's great, but to say
Yeah.
he built the, no, it was the inspiration behind JP Buckle doing everything. So it's just good to get the right information out there because we keep telling the same story over and over. And actually, I was watching the Harold Ballard story. I taped it, and then they said, "Here's the Conn Smythe did everything. He paid. He bought the Leafs. He bought the guard. I said, hey, you guys are not even telling the truth." And so like a couple of years ago, we had the 100th anniversary for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I said, well, they started as Toronto Arenas, and then they was Toronto St. Pat's. In 1927, they became the Toronto Maple Leafs. So 100-year history will be 2027, technically. Because
Right.
so everything is just. I try to straighten things out, but that's okay.
It's
Going
yeah,
forward,
yeah. Like I said before, it's if you know, during the very beginning of the hobby, you have a certain group of people who are telling this a certain story that it doesn't change because again, like
especially if it's in print, right? Like Beckett and
right, right,
we had the
and
CSC up here, which Canadian Sports Magazine. So that was sort of the offshoot of the Beckett, almost going not that far back, but pretty close.
yeah, I mean, the hobby pioneers really had their sights set on what they were looking for and what they were discovering, and it obviously if they're doing the printing of the magazines, then they're gonna have the narrative, and it doesn't change. And then again, I in back of me here, I have all these auction catalogs, and uh, they're all great stories, I guess, from like the T206 Wagner to the Lajoie, right?
But
The
then there's a
13,
lot of embellishment along the way, and you have to, sort through
yeah,
those things because once you read it there and you read it here and you read it there, it's fact at that point. And going forward, what are you going to do?
yeah, and well, so and I love a good stories next to the next guy, but it's it's the fact that a lot of these auction catalogs were trying to sell the card, and they were getting information from where. They don't say. They don't say where they get
There's
the
no
information.
citations, right?
Right. Exactly.
So they get
And
the
so
story from the seller, who got the story from his grandfather, who got the story from, you
and
know,
it could be the telephone game,
yeah.
And
But the
so
embellishment added on is really where it gets, the story gets bigger and the fish gets bigger and bigger as you keep talking about the catch of the day, right?
yeah, and the card price gets bigger and bigger too sometimes
Yeah,
because of
well, that can happen.
yeah. So my oldest signature is actually Oscar Mello, the 1930s St. Louis Browns player, and that's on a 1934 Diamond Star, and
Diamond
so that's
Star.
my oldest one. Yeah,
I
but
like the name of that set, Diamond Star.
it's a great set. It's a
Hmm.
great set. It's one of my favorites. Let's see what else we got
I like when
here.
they do the diamond drop back in a set. It looks really cool, like the first, second, third base, and like the whole encompass the whole game, which is nice.
And then he says he has a signature of Terry Sawchuk.
Yeah, so Terry Sawchuk, he died young. You have the key players in the NHL. The guys who died young are usually worth the most. Like those are mostly from the 50s or 60s, so the
Yeah.
70s. Those guys who died young, their autographs. Bill Barocco's story from the Toronto Maple Leafs, who died after scoring the goal in 1950. He died 7 days difference between him and J.P. Beckel. They died. Uh, Interesting. There's a little story in there, but I'll leave it for another day. Yeah, Terry Sawchuk, and Gordie Howe. I see somebody was talking about Gordie Howe. Great, beautiful autograph, but he signed a lot, like Johnny
He
Bauer.
did.
They all signed a lot, and they were free giving people. Those are the greatest guys. Those sports stars from that time.
I I met Johnny Bauer a couple of times. I did some artwork for him, and I did a video on him too. And I just I had to get a card of his.
That's a
So
good
I think
card. I like that one. I like how
yeah,
they did the. See, I'm about aesthetics, so I see there's a nice yellow line with the number, and so they're thinking about. It's not just a picture. It's
yeah,
they're creating a nice. That's why I really enjoy the display boxes and the wrappers, because that's the true creativity. Because
yeah,
it puts it at a time and a place when the artwork is done. A period. They're thinking, okay, hockey, how do we see hockey? Because really the designs aren't really copied from anything for the most part. You can tell because, sometimes they're really off. You know, that
yeah.
sometimes I've seen some stuff even later in the 80s from China, and uh, there was a Gretzky had it was supposed to be, it wasn't Gretzky, but it was supposed to be Gretzky, and then he has a helmet that looked like a German World War II helmet. It's just the artwork. It was funny. So anyway,
Yeah, I just did another video on um the Tim Horton,
yes. Oh, Horton's the
and
other autograph, another one who died early.
he's a really interesting player.
Yes.
He's really interesting because he had a very decent business mind as well, and I think he was like one of the first ones. He could be like I think one of the first ones to actually own a business that he turned into a multimillionaire because of that business too.
I think it was after the fact more.
Was it?
Yeah, it didn't turn into anything till much later. Um,
Well, after he
and
retired.
well, he started out. He had a burger place, and then he moved into the donuts, and it was really starting to work out for him. The thing is with Tim Hortons is the coffee blend was amazing. He They hit it right on, because you can promote something and it's all great. If it doesn't taste good, then you know
Right.
but the
Yeah.
taste was beautiful. Like Colombian is the main line share, and there must be some Costa Rican. I was into coffee corporate sales for many years, so I knew a lot about coffee as much as I do about hockey. I got that deep, and and you get to know the finer coffee. And he just, sometimes you just hit the right formula. It doesn't matter, be it gum, be it coffee or whatever. If you have the right blend and the right mix, sometimes you just hit a home run, and he did with that. And now they're a billion-dollar company, and they're Canada, United States, worldwide almost.
I've never been to one, but I think I really want to hit one up at some point if I can find one. There aren't any around New England, so that I'm aware of.
Not yet. A lot in Michigan, a lot in the border states there, but
And
yeah, we're
we
coming.
have we have Dunkins around here. And,
I like Dunkin' Donuts. They tried up here, it worked back in the 90s, 2000s, and then they kind of just fuzzed. But I did like their coffee. I found it a little bit light. I think as you get a little older, you want a little heavier base coffee.
yeah, I
When
like
you're
my coffee.
younger,
Yeah, I like my coffee like motor oil. You know,
oh yeah, okay.
so yeah, so that's really interesting about Tim Horton, and fortunately, the way he passed was not good.
Yeah, I think
So
he was drinking and driving too, and he was
yeah,
had a lot of problems with that, and a lot of very very interesting character. There could be a movie on him, honestly. It's just would be a sad ending, but I mean,
yeah,
going
yeah,
forward, because there's a lot of other things that kind of went on beyond him, and his wife's fight for the company. And when she sold it, the guy who bought it took it in the right direction. That's when it went to millions. And she didn't want to sell it because she was on painkillers or some pills or something like that. There's a big story behind it, but it's really interesting. But even his career was very interesting
yeah,
in the sense of
yeah.
of the player that he was. And yeah, he was good business minded. I think he lucked out a couple times. Really, that's what happened. But it takes something to start a company. It takes something to write a book. It takes something to for
Yeah.
these people to step up. And
It
those are the people that you look up to in society.
it it takes, it takes courage.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, a lot of people don't understand that, when you're doing something like this, that it takes a little bit of courage to do this because, when you're writing, you're a writer, as I am, and a lot of people don't want to put their name out there. They don't want to put their face out there. They have a lot of problems sometimes trying. They don't. They're afraid. And it does take courage to do a video, to be a writer and a podcaster, or do a video, just
We're
because of
winging it. We're just winging it here because we
100%.
but we have enough experience that we can back up on. We
Yeah,
can rely on that, which is really good. We have
yeah,
our own focus, we have our own information, but we're actively doing the work, and we try to find out as much, and it makes it easier to talk about stuff going forward.
yeah. I tell my viewers that I wasn't gonna do this. I wasn't gonna have a platform of my own, but it was, because of Dustin, the personal sports card dad, kind of pushed me in that direction. And I'm really kind of glad he did, because I am having a lot of fun with this, and I've met so many people through the hobby,
Hmm.
uh, and it's just it's broadened my horizon, if you will, and my own education, and I don't know what else is out there, as well. So this is really kind of fantastic, I think.
I think it's important too that that we all look at other videos, you know, good news, bad news, whatever, what have
Yeah.
you, hype. And it's the old hobby historians that are really putting out some great information, good backup. Having some guests on, doing your research, sharing your research, so it goes out there at least to people. And maybe it might help only a handful of people, but me finding out about the Opeachy, that's groundbreaking stuff. Like,
Yeah.
really, if it wasn't for a small little article and I saw Opeachy there, I went, what, and you just like, hey, it's a new day.
Yeah, they really did have some great stuff back in the 1930s too,
Yeah.
it's a really interesting company that I don't really think a lot of people are talking about. And I recently did a video on our hobby, founders, the pioneers, and I got a lot of really great feedback on that. And so I think that the cards are one portion of the hobby, in general. You also have a lot of people who want to know how the hobby started, and along with that, how the cards were issued, and who issued them, and just other aspects. I think people really want to learn more about this stuff, and um, I'm not sure that there are a whole lot of people out there that are doing the research. It's research is not easy to do. It takes as you know, it takes a long time to kind of get everything together. So
Your rewards are few and far between. It's not like you're getting this paycheck every week and what have you. It's the paycheck is really a little piece of information, like finding the Opeachy. That made all that digging worthwhile. What I was really trying to do, because I'm coming out with the website and app in the spring show in Toronto, um, in May or April, sorry. Uh, I really wanted to add more to the fortify, let's just say the tens and twenties. So, being detailed oriented that I am, I started digging in a little bit further, and I started finding out some information. And then I went, I went full tilt. I just went, okay, wow, well, let's dive into this. So I've been diving into all these, and it's amazing when you start looking. The peripheral is one thing, but when you dive in a little deeper into the companies and start doing some really hard research, you find out there's a lot going on, more than we probably ever want to know. Now,
yeah,
Opeachy, can we call that Maple Crisp Bet slash Opeachy? I don't know.
if it gets in the mainstream, right?
It will.
It's
I'll
yeah,
write it eventually one day when I get around to figuring most of it out. but it's okay to even put it out there right now. Like
Yeah,
maybe somebody will contact me and say, "Hey, Bobby, I have this, I don't know, article or something. This guy found this." Or you never know. If you don't put it out there, you don't know. And we're just, we're spitballing here, but we try to bring as much forward as we can.
right.
And I know you guys are out there, commenting. We really appreciate it. Hey, Ziggy, what's happening? There's a lot of great people here. It's nice to see that they comment and some people, care. We can't
Yeah,
answer all the questions, unfortunately, but
we try.
we're
We
trying.
do try, yeah.
Because there's no
Um,
simple one-word answer to our stuff. It's like, okay, you want to know? Here we go.
right.
Let's write an
I
article.
I kinda like it when somebody asks me a question and I start to think about that question, and then it may lead to something else, and, um,
Hmm.
you never know, and, that question could lead to an article or a book or more
Serendipity,
research.
right?
Yeah, yeah, and, that's what I really kind of enjoy, and sometimes, uh the names that I'm seeing on um like uh like this right here, Bobby Hall. No, did Bobby Hall just pass away?
He did, yes.
Okay,
Just passed away.
so
Yep.
yeah,
I think he was
um,
84.
okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's a huge name, obviously,
He
in
is. There's a little connotation to his name. He was, given good words and bad words for other things
yeah,
that went on in his personal life, sort of like a Pete Rose-ish. Not quite, but just the way the whole thing, between betting and his personal life and his career, I would say.
yeah,
So there is some disparity there, which I don't like to see. I just keep things separate, you know.
yeah. Yeah, there's I think for a lot of sports writers, the newer sports writers, they're having a hard time keeping the ball player's personal life separate from their
Yeah,
playing career, and it's really kind of affecting the way the ball player is should be getting into the Hall of Fame, right? So,
yeah.
Kurt Schilling is a great example of this
Mm,
because he's a very political guy, but
yes.
uh, we don't put people into Hall of Fames based on their politics.
No.
It's what is they have done for their team and for the sport. And that's again that's a pretty big problem I think going forward too. And I have heard that there's been some talk that certain ball players should be basically have their plaques taken down from Cooperstown because of what they have done off the field. Uh, Ty Cobb, Ted Williams, and I don't think that's correct.
It isn't.
Uh, yeah, it's not correct, and so there are ball players in Cooperstown, and I'm sure there are players in every Hall of Fame that have done things that you and I would find reprehensible, but it doesn't really matter. They're in there for their playing ability and for what they've done for the sport. So that
Maybe not for
that's
the sport. Maybe let's say in the sport.
yeah, 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 yeah. I know there was one guy, Alan Eagleton, if you've heard
Eagleson,
that name.
yes, yes.
Eagleson, yeah. He tried to put himself in the Hall of Fame, the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah, see, Alan Nicholson, I see he kind of, well, the story goes is that, he ripped off Bobby Orr, took all his money, but he was a lawyer. But he was instrumental in starting the union for the NHLPA. And, so he has a lot of hands in the pie, but in bad ways and good ways. So,
Right.
you know, and people, I honestly think that it's limited. Builders, I think there needs to be sort of a subcategory to the builders. People who dedicate their life into doing things for, let's just say the NHL or even baseball. These other people who do things in the background that don't get the recognition. Maybe they should be in there as something else.
Yeah,
The honorary in a sense, not maybe full blown. I know there's the builder, and then you have the player, the builder, and there's nothing really after that. It's sort of you're cut off. But I think there should be sort of a subcategory and maybe an honorarium, um,
yeah.
for something.
Yeah, so for Cooperstown, there is no builder category, which uh, I've always kind of thought that there should be. There are other categories, right? The writer's wing,
Yeah.
but then you have a guy like Buck O'Neill of the Negro Leagues,
Hmm.
and he was just in, and I thought that he should have been in 2006, and he missed out by one vote. And I was very upset by this. I think a lot of people were as well, because he really promoted the game and he did a lot for it. And so he was left out, and they put him in after his passing.
Yeah,
And
and that's a shame because they're getting older, and
yeah,
I think that's your accomplishments of that you've done something and getting admitted before you get to be 80 whatever, and
right.
then oh okay we'll get him in now that he's passed.
It's kind of too late,
It is. Well,
you
it's
know.
never too late, but I mean it's
But
in
when
his
you're
sense, yeah.
yeah, and so he doesn't really have during his playing career, he really doesn't have the numbers for a Hall of Fame, but I think because of what he meant to baseball and what he did, you could kind of consider him a, a, a a pioneer, if you will, or just in a separate. He's now kind of in a separate category, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You look at there's so many different people. I'll use Fran Tarkenton. How about that? Fran Tarkenton. But then he went on to be an announcer, and he's helped the
Yeah,
sport in that way. Maybe not as a player, but combine the two. You know,
yeah.
everybody knows his name, and so there's a lot of guys out there like that. That
But Bob Uecker, it's another
Bob
one.
Uecker, another one. Yeah, there you go. So should we include those guys in a certain way? There's like I said, honorary, but I think that's almost where I'd kind of like it to be because honorable mention is something. You know, you may not have finished first, but there's a guy who won the championship and he won once and never heard from him again. Then there's the guy who finished second 14 times. Well, and he's not in the fame, but there's something said to being finished second that many times in a row. You don't have to always be the champion. It's the longevity. There's hockey players who didn't do great, but then they went on to coach other winning teams and what have you. And then their involvement in the other things that they did around the sport. Not, you know, I'm just saying there should be more to the Hall of Fame than just being your player. It should be something else on top of
Yeah, I think so too. And Lefty O'Doul is another example of a guy who pretty much had baseball over in Japan. He kind of built Japanese baseball. Where do you put him in? And
would there be Ikro if there was, I don't know,
yeah,
so these guys are instrumental.
yeah, I agree with this too. I mean, I'm a big Hall guy. Same with Chris, and we talk about this all the time. That I am very comfortable with having a lot of players in the Hall of Fame, and and you know, unfortunately, I think for football at least, they're not all that comfortable with having players past a certain date. And I think what's happening in
Because they've been reviewed too long and they haven't been added. They've been
I
passed over so many times they become not talked about.
irrelevant. Yeah, that's just one part, but I think the other thing too is that they're not in the public eye. A lot of them are passed on, and you have like a whole group of sports writers who are really not interested or don't know about some of these players, and it doesn't matter what sport it is.
Well, you said that in your video when you were talking about the past hobby historians and the Frank Nagy's and all these guys who really put a lot of work into building the hobby and making it is sort of what it is today. They're sort of passed on. They're not notarized. They're not anything. People don't even know their name. It's
Yeah,
nice to write those articles and put their names out there. There's a lot of them out there. I understand, and even Benjamin. Like, should he be in the Hall of Fame? As some, I don't know. There's a different Hall of Fame for that. I don't want to be all these Hall of Fames, but more a little bit more on a pedestal. Some of these guys should be
right.
to the hobby or maybe to the industry. I don't know. how to do it. I'm not about to start doing it. I'm just saying there should be something else. It can't just be about the best is the best is the best, and that's it. Those guys go live the millionaire lifestyle, and they take it from there. And that's their one conquest is to make the Hall of Fame, right? So,
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of Hall of Famers, I think, or near Hall of Famers that just are passed over time and time again. And I think the Hall of Fame, the voting process itself, I've
it's
spoken
flawed.
about
Yeah.
this. It's yeah, it needs to be changed. Is what I've spoken to this with other sports writers, and one in particular has said there's no reason why we have sports writers voting on players that they have never seen before
Yeah.
or seen very little of. And you know, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. At one point, it did. You
Mhm.
know, when they came out with the Baseball Writers Association back in 1908.
Mhm.
That's everybody read the newspaper then, right?
Yes.
Everybody followed these sports writers, but now I think things are a little bit more politicized, a little more polarized, if you will, and and
Sure.
it's you have a lot of bias as well, right?
Sure. It's going to be political in any sense, that I know this guy and he knows this guy, and yeah,
Right.
let's put him through. I was speaking with his daughter the other day, his granddaughter, and things happen. And it's like, yeah, it's like when you write an article, you sit there and you go, oh yeah, Conn Smythe, yeah, he's a great. Oh, this Bickle guy, what the heck? Why? What's now you start seeing a different story. So it's important for us going forward that we put our information out. You put your videos, I write my books and write articles. It's good to put that out there. We're sort of a necessity for the hobby, not going forward, but at least to carry the information forward and pay it forward to some degree.
Yeah. Um, there was something too that I wanted to get your take on, and that was Black Cat Virginia mild cigarettes. Um, and I guess these were I know the company. It's an English company,
Hmm.
and I think you may have asked the question: did cards come in tins with this?
Well, I think I was
Right.
confirming that they came in cigarette packs, and I mentioned a couple. Black Cat was your basic, it was everywhere, more so than most cigarettes. You can see all the advertisements still around, but it's a cool name, and it comes over from England, so it's popular in England, it's popular in Canada, popular. I don't know about the U.S. For Black Cat, but it's just one of those cool names that kind of kept, like Derby. Derby's kind of cool for a time period.
Yeah.
And then the Sweet Caporals was kind of a neat. Take on things. It was this girl who was standing. So, we get used to motifs and what have you. And that Black Cat was kind of a bad boy, kind of maybe cigarette. It was the cheap one, but yeah, it's got a black cat on it. Bad
Yeah.
luck. I'm bad boy. I don't know.
Yeah. They also had a magazine too for a while.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Hmm.
I've only seen covers of it. I haven't read the entire magazines yet, but at some point I will. And I,
Hmm.
I think Chris here he's got a good point with this we were talking about earlier. So yeah, Chris, I think you're right about that.
I even picked up some baseball autographs recently.
Really, which ones?
Oh, down right here, I've got a postcard of Dick Allen.
Oh wow, he probably should be in the Hall of Fame.
See,
I'm
there,
not.
there we go again. So you start going, hey, this guy was amazing. He's a great
Yeah,
player. Richie Allen, Dick Allen, whatever you want to call him. And
yeah,
it's a great postcard. Like you don't see many postcards of these guys. So,
no, no.
and I don't know the name of everybody offhand because the writing's too small. Uh, Purcell. Yeah. See, this is a very popular one because they're playing for the Colt 45s.
Yeah, the Houston. Who's it again?
Uh, Purcell.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Dick Purcell. I think his name is. A couple other ones. Cat Peterson. I don't know. You would know these more than I would.
Yeah, so the 1960s, right?
Yeah,
So
it'll be early '60s. This gentleman wrote away for autographs, and I picked up his collection of all the players that he wrote away for.
some of those 1960 guys are a little difficult for me. I really haven't studied the 1960s baseball all that much, and that looks like
He had a bowling. That's what's his name? What's his last name? Kuenn. I don't want to mispronounce it, but it's is it?
Harvey Keene.
Yeah, Harvey. Oh, is it Keen with the
Yeah,
U? Okay.
yeah, Harvey Keene, very famous
He's got
ball
a
player.
bowling pro shop card at the
Wow,
bottom.
that's pretty cool. That's
Well,
really cool.
I picked up
Harvey
about
Keene.
40, which was kind of neat. This was kind of interesting. I picked up this. It's from 1997. It's a ticket from Bradford, and on the back it's signed Gretzky,
Oh wow.
but it's Walter Gretzky. It's his father.
Oh, Walter Gretzky, was that his
Yeah.
dad?
So yeah, his dad. But the autograph is very similar. 'Cause a lot of people are going, "Oh, it's Wayne Gretzky." I go, "No, it's Walter. It's his dad." You know where his, you know where Wayne Gretzky got his autograph. Look at the G. That's right from his dad. Very much the same.
Wow.
So it was kind of nice. It's '97. Gretzky's still playing. I think he's in. Was he in LA? No, I can't remember when he jumped around. But anyways, yeah, I ended up with a whole bunch, and I even ended up with a couple golf autographs of some old guys from whenever.
I love golf. I collect a lot of golf cards.
These are a couple. They won a lot of opens. I forget the. I couldn't recognize their autographs. I had to go ask a few people. Now I can't even remember their names. Like I said, I got like 40 or 50 of these, so I was having some fun. I got a couple hockey ones, Frank Bass and Hank Bass, and a few others. But you know, I got into the baseball. I figured, this guy had him at a show, and I'm sitting there going, "Well, you want $5 each, really?" I said, a couple of these got to be worth. Like I know Glenn Hall, I know, you know, Hank Bass, and I said those are $15-20. I said I'll take that one. I'll take that one. And I
Yeah.
said, how much you want for all of them? And most of them are baseball. I'm sitting there going, he goes, just give me $80. I said, all right, done. Let's do it.
Cool.
And I didn't know what I was getting into, but I figured I'd be okay with the hockey and a few of the baseball, but it turned out to be pretty good. So
Nice.
it's kind of fun, and it's nice to learn a little. See, you learn through finds, and I'm learning about Richie Allen, and I'm looking them up and seeing where they played, and it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a really interesting connection between Richie Allen and Kurt Flood. When Kurt Flood was traded, I think to the Phillies, Allen was already on that team, and he said, "Don't go to the Phillies; they're racist."
Mm.
And so that's when he decided to sue Major League Baseball. And
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, and this is see that's another reason why I think Kurt Flood should get in the Hall of Fame. He's got the
Uh,
numbers. He's got the numbers, but he really did change the way baseball is played today.
hmm
You know, um,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
important. Both Allen and Flood deserve to be in the. Yeah, see, there you go.
yeah. It's more sometimes there are certain players and that are in certain events that do deserve to be recognized in the Hall of Fame,
Okay.
and I think that's one of them. It's it's too bad. I don't think he. Tell you the truth, I don't think he will be getting in the Hall of Fame. Either one of those guys. If they do, it's going to take a while. Same with the steroid guys. You know,
hmm
um, do you do you think is there any steroid issues going on in hockey at all?
I don't know. Can I take a 1-minute washroom break?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I drank too much water, so I'd like to come back and talk, but I just need to take a 2-minute break. So
Yeah, absolutely.
you can carry on pretty good yourself. You're good. Okay, I'll be right back. Sorry.
All right, guys. If you have any questions, I'm all ears. And what Bobby really, he's very decent with his answers, and he's got a lot to say. Um, let me see if I can get some. Let's see. Harold Baines can get in the Hall of Fame. So Harold Baines is really interesting because uh, he didn't lead the league in anything, and I think that at one point he thought that he didn't deserve to get in the Hall of Fame either. I think there are obviously a few other Harold Baines types of players in the Hall of Fame already. Scott Rowland just got in. A lot of people say that Scott Rowland shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I think that he has a very good case himself. But if I can think of the top of my head, a few other players, such as the catcher for the White Sox back in 1919, he might not have the numbers, obviously. Who knows how many guys are actually getting in the Hall of Fame because they knew somebody else. Let's see. Brandon Ryan, you did miss some Jefferson Burdick chats, but we'll talk about Burdick again, I'm sure. So
I'm back.
Oops. There we go. There we go.
There we
All
go.
right. Yeah. So Tony has something here.
Sure.
Harold Baines. Are you familiar with Harold Baines at all? Chicago White Sox.
I know the name. Yeah, I'm not too familiar. No, not enough.
So a lot of people say that he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame and that he got in the Hall of Fame because of connections, I think, through Tony La Russa. And I think there are a lot of other players, obviously, that are in the Hall of Fame for their connections as well. And
yeah, I know that's with hockey too. There's a couple guys you sit there and go, this guy isn't, but these guys are. It's like, yeah. I don't say it's the old boys club. It's just, everybody has connections. I started working hard out there, and then my cousin knew somebody, and he got a job with IBM because he knew somebody, and then I ended up working, doing landscaping when I got out of school, and he ended up going into business right away. So, connections, you get opportunities, and I think that's what happens everywhere in every part of our lives.
Yeah. So Brandon wanted to know if he missed any of the Jefferson Burdick chat.
We didn't really even get into Jefferson, but all of this is started by Jefferson, so I guess we'll give him a nod at that point.
Yeah. I mean, Jefferson Burdick, I had spoken about him in one of my last videos, and a lot has been said about Burdick that may or may not be true. Especially what tends to happen is that when people don't have all the facts, they try to insert something else into the holes, if you will, right, to make everything fit. And I think that has happened with Jefferson Burdick. We don't have everything. We don't know everything about Jefferson Burdick's life, his career, how he started the hobby. And so I did a pretty lengthy article on Jefferson Burdick, and I went so far to find his college transcripts.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and he only went to school for basically college for 2 years. And this is in 1921, 22, and then there's a huge gap there between I guess 1921 or 1922 and 1933, 1934. So we don't know exactly what is going on with him. And I did find where he had stated in a letter that he had went to the 1933 World's Fair in Chicago, and that set off his journey into the hobby to create the hobby. So
yeah, I think he's just a regular guy who wasn't very social, and he kind of got into cards. It was very self-appointing, so to speak, and some people just run with it, like I did.
yeah.
Like I just got into I didn't like not knowing. And imagine him trying to get into it back then without any computers or anything. It was just mailing things out. Like I loved your stories on it. It was really good. You mail them out. And here's your honus wagon. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'll mail it back. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
stuff
I
you're
would
doing there.
I would never fly today. Chris has a really interesting comment here. Were any of the pioneers in the hockey card hobby who helped to popularize it? Do you know of any specific people?
Well, there was. It's kind of hard because I I would have to say there's no really one person that stands out. There's a couple hobby historian, a lot of guys. There's Carlton McDermott. There's Ronald Villeneuve, who just passed away. He was my mentor. Andrew Pawalczyk was his last name. He was the early guys who got into doing stuff in the 80s and 90s, but going farther back, no, because hockey really wasn't popularized. We just fed off the American information. So, when Becca came out, it just popularized everything. We had some Canadian, as I've shown you, or as you have seen. There is magazines here, but it wasn't very popular, and it wasn't big shows going on. Not until the 90s did really things, late 80s and 90s, did things really start to go for hockey for that type of information, or those people, starting up shows. Guys were just trying to make a few bucks and trying to get people together. So most of it
Okay.
was, and a lot of rumors would come over from the national or from, so they go, hey, we got to try something here in Canada eventually, and in a smaller sense. But nobody really stands out as doing anything that I know that I can really quote at this point. And I might be wrong, but nobody. There's a few guys, but not many.
Is there a national type card convention in Canada?
There's no.
Something as large as the national in Canada?
Yeah, it's the Toronto Sports Card Expo. It's been going since 1990, 91, and I'd say 400 to 500 dealers, or at that time,
Oh,
which
okay.
which is decent. That's a
Uh,
lot of it's fairly decent show, and
uh,
it goes today. It goes for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, almost just like the national.
Okay.
Uh, but it's definitely a lot smaller. But it has been like the numbers have been pretty good in the last. So I guess if we're 10% of the population, how many people go through the national on an average? 100,000.
Yeah, but 100,000.
Yeah, so ours is about 10,000. So it's
Okay.
perfect matched. It's
Yeah.
10,000 people. Was at the heyday, in the heyday, and every year's varied a little bit, but the last couple have been great. I mean, it's a little bit more commercialized. There's not maybe 400 dealers or maybe 400 tables, 500 tables. So it is a little
Okay.
different, but you do have that edge of the hobby or the business that's coming into it. The investors and that side, the newer cards going forward. I just hope Fanatics does the right thing, taking it forward. They have to change some things, but if they understand that, they'll maybe take the hobby a lot farther than it's going right now. I think people are getting bored and they want to have something different, something
Yeah,
a little.
branch out. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe rewards. Maybe you get a free helmet. Like they supply all those things. Why not get into something like that? Hey, I pulled a helmet card. I can get a free helmet if I go to this sports card place, or if I go to a free tickets to a game and I got 20% off of their souvenir stand. I don't know, just something
Yeah.
opposed to, oh, I pulled a card. I got to send it, get it graded, and then I'm going to sell it, and then and give more of those out, not just being that 101, 1 of 10. Put 500 in, maybe do shorter print runs. I don't know. I'm not solving the hobby. I'm just saying things are a little different going forward.
Yeah.
You want to see it supported rather than just being an all of one uh, zebra refractor, whatever.
It's it's really kind of getting ridiculous, to
It's
the truth.
degentrified at this point.
Yeah.
In a sense,
Um,
I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying, that nice high end quality. It's sort of like going back to old furniture. You have a Duncan Fife, nice old table and chairs, and now it's just all fast food kind of, press board, whatever.
yeah,
Looks shiny on the outside, but it's really only going to last you for 3 years.
it's the junk wax era, but
Yeah.
just wrapped up in a different bow. And I was talking earlier that a lot of the cards that I collected back in the 1980s, you can see this in the Beckett's, what they were going for when they were new. and then what they're going for now, those same exact cards, and it's just plummeted. Those nobody's really collecting cards from your stars from like say 1983 or 82. They're not really being collected, right? So 20 years from now, the cards that we're collecting, the modern, I'm talking about modern now, the modern cards that we're collecting 20 to 30 years from now, how many of those are actually going to be worth money? You know, who's going to collect them?
Well, nothing has to survive the test of time because everything comes out, goes into a holder, gets graded right away. Where, older cards had to survive the test of time,
Right.
you know, and we weren't known to being kept. They were kept by few, obviously, but not by everybody. So it's a different time and a different collecting era. Different for people. Kids want to open cards and packs, but then they see what Daddy opens and they want the same pack. No, you can't get that $500 pack. I'm sorry, just whatever. Uh, I think things have. I look forward to them changing it to support it going forward. I'd like to really see that because I think they need that representation.
Yeah.
Sports
And
cards.
I think too that you just mentioned something very interesting is that your average card today is going directly into a holder, which means that it's going to have a higher grade, if you will, going forward than your cards that were your pre-war cards, especially, but your cards of the 1980s and prior to that. So
Hmm.
you, that too is going to create I guess maybe not less demand, but the value is not going to be there for cards of today in the future.
Well, I guess we sort of became the collectors of whenever era you're from, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, but appreciation of the older cards, where they appreciate some of the older cards that aren't so old to us now, and them going forward will be their stars, so they will carry that torch forward. I do see that. I see vintage being something that's going to really be secured, pre-war stuff. I think that stuff is really going to become the gold because we're past 100 years. We're coming up to all of the cards and getting to, the 30s will be here. The 30s, that's where, 10s, 20s, and 30s are your key pre war stuff. And I think that carried forward. There's not a lot of high grades in most of those, and there's not a lot to go around, to be honest. So I think going forward, those will be the things that'll live on forever. And then the key rookies through all those times and all those Hall of Famers throughout those years too.
Yeah. Um, that was a really interesting time in the hobby because it was just starting out as a hobby in America. And getting back to Jefferson Burdick, when he officially started the hobby in 1935, what he didn't really have a whole lot to go on.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically, I think, as if I was reading his letters correctly, he was using price guides from the coin and stamp industries to try to judge what the cards should be going for. And again, I don't think that he um, kind of like had a clear idea on rarity at the time when he issued his um, catalog in 1939.
Yeah, I think the lion's share of all this was started from the coin and stamp industry. It's just cards kind of melted into that and took over for what they're, how they were doing things as things went forward. I really think that was probably one of the key. We get a lot of the standards because they started grading coins a long time ago. And all these other things. So I think hockey cards and now comics and now video games and now whatever else they're going to do in the future. Albums, 45s, long plays, whatever. So
Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting world going forward where everything's going to be encapsulated, which is a good thing. But
yeah,
I still don't.
yeah,
I like stuff ungraded. And like I said, I like more three-dimensional collectibles so that I can see it and put it on a display shelf and look at it and touch it. You know.
yeah. That's something that I really kind of enjoy too. I want to see something like this right here. It's golf. It's the 1914 Marzuma. I want to see this card. I don't want to see a digital representation of it. I had spoken a couple of times that back in 1990, I went to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum and in Boston, and 2 days later, the paintings that I saw were stolen, and um, it's a very different experience when you see something like this and you get to touch it and you get to actually see it, and then if you see it online, it's completely different. There's something that's missing from it, and so um, I don't think that digital cards or digital currency is the same thing.
No, it'll be different going forward. But we really don't know. Uh, Here's the question: anyone tried to calculate pre-war? Oh my gosh, no. We barely figured everything out. The print runs are just virtually impossible. But you can
Yeah,
actually use the pop report as a base of
yeah, yeah.
something, of comparable base, if anything. But you can't really sum up card prints, whatever.
I tried to do that with the T206,
Yeah, no, that's a
and
different
and
animal.
I got yeah. So they figured just because I have so with the interesting thing with the American Tobacco Company is that there were reports that were issued for it because the government was going after it, right?
Oh,
So this is really one of the only. It's a very rare time that you actually have that kind of information, and I tried to I tried to figure out how many cards they could have made through how much revenue they were getting in for their tobacco packages. But then you have to kind of figure too that they may have issued two or three or sometimes up to five cards per pack, and that doesn't guarantee what is in the pack, right? So in one pack of
yeah.
cigarettes, you may not get baseball cards. You may get another a non-sport set. So they said there were millions of these cards in 1909, 1910. But then you can kind of go off the population reports today to figure out, maybe guess how many cards are even out there today. And I figured if the population report is saying, say, I don't know, 1.5 million cards of T206, how many of those cards are ungraded? How many are raw? And I think that number may be twice as many. I
I would
think.
say, and I think
Yeah.
that changes as we go through the decades. But yeah, there is some semblance you can put in there, sure. And I'd say
Yeah.
that you're probably pretty close to being right on that. And how many were destroyed is like that's the other portion, right?
Right.
Didn't survive.
It's time. Yeah. I mean, you're right now. It's 100 and some odd years. So
Yeah,
the only ones I think you can for sure say how many were printed was the 1941 double play, and it looked like 240,000. And that's only because if you have anything that's in a court reported, I guess, lawsuit, and that may be in there, which it was in fact. That's the only reason why we know some of the stuff is because, like, say, Flair versus Tops,
one
and
second.
oh sure. So as I was saying, the only reason why we know for a lot of these cards, the print runs are is because they were in lawsuits, and so a lot of times we just don't know how many cards are available now, or uh, printed or survive. In fact, let's see some of the other comments here. What are the numbers? Are let's see what. Okay, so
Sorry, the wife came down to grab food, so
oh, okay.
she'll be in the background. Don't worry. Just
Oh, that's no good.
yeah, getting back to what you were saying about that. I wanted to say something. I can't remember now. Regardless, we can move on. There's 150,000 questions we can answer.
Yeah. Um, yeah, the paper shortages and the rationing.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a little difference between Canada and United States on that. Where we had, we were a little different in that time period. I know there was, we had ration coins, and what was it? Can't remember really. I guess it was the Depression era. We suffered at different times in different ways because we were under different, I don't know, I guess different
Yeah,
governments at that time. So
that happened too with Great Britain. So they had their depression in the early to mid 1920s because of World War One,
yes,
and then um, their depression was different. It was caused for different reasons than our depression,
yeah,
for the most part, because you can the Great Depression really kind of has its start after World War One, right?
hmm,
Like by 1920 or so,
yes.
and
Well, there is
for
something to that, which is interesting. That if you look at, we're talking about the war drives and the paper drives and all that other stuff. Canada enters the war before the United States in 1939, and you guys come in 1942. So we have 3 years of a change in our what we're doing as a country in paper drives and whatever ration tickets and what have you. And same thing with World War One too. I think we were in it before you guys then too. So
yeah,
that changes the perspective of what was going on in the sort of industry at that time. I believe going forward, just to state that maybe that had
yeah.
some effect.
Well, I mean, Britain again, they lost almost an entire generation,
Yeah,
and whereas America, we were in it for basically a year and a half when we lost what 217,000. So I hate to say it, but it's a pinprick, and that really does affect the economics of a country
it
by
does.
having that few people, and then so Great Britain really has its uh, Great Depression in the early 1920s and throughout the 1920s, and then America starts in 1929,
Yes.
ends about 1940 or so. Um, so I'm not entirely sure too about how much the paper drives affected sports cards at all. I mean,
Well, with shortages of everything at that time,
yeah,
sugar and what have you, even for companies and businesses, you're trying to make gum as a business, and you
yeah,
know, the sugar is cut back, and everything was for the war. I know there was a difficult time for everyone, but people suffered at different times, I think. And England, the United States, and Canada, I think we're probably three in the same kind of thing. With the British American Tobacco Company and Burrell Tobacco and all the other stuff that was going on, we're all kind of combined in there. And like we talked before on the other show, that the Cardiophilia Society started in 1920, mid 20s. So
yeah,
they're doing stuff way before we are. Then you guys are catching up, and then Canada's slowly catching into. So it's just a whole roundabout. But it's amazing how, as far apart as we are, we're very much together in the card industries
yeah.
from the early
There
on.
was there was also something too that I found very interesting, and I had always kind of heard a little bit about it, but um, as you can see in the 1920s, where cards they're in black and white, right?
Yep.
And it seems like there's a shortage of ink, and a lot of that ink was coming from Germany.
Makes well there. Yeah, make a little bit of sense there, right? Um, yeah. So we have ink in the C series, and then we go to black and white in the 1913, which is getting close to the war, and
Yeah,
then the 20s.
there's
Most of
really
the
nothing
cards are
to it.
black and white. Yeah, there's not much in color. Like I think the printing technology had changed too at that time. We remember went from a printing stone to um, the
Wait,
other printing plates. So
yeah,
that changed everything dramatically, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. There was like I think three different types of printing plates. As
Yeah, there
I
was different
remember.
processes. Yes, I
Yeah,
understand. So that maybe had something to do with it too,
yeah,
because they could do color all the time, right?
yeah,
Because all they had to do is etch the player and then apply the different colors. It was easy on the printing stone, but on the printing plate, I'm not too sure how the colors were easily put on. I did see
yeah.
a
So,
video about it, but it wasn't as easy as the printing stone, to be honest.
yeah. So I think they used zinc, copper, and there was another one too, which I can't quite remember off the top of my head. And again, I'm wondering if zinc was easy, or copper was easier than zinc, or maybe aluminum. I think the aluminum was the other one. Aluminum's pretty easy to work with, but I'm sure they all have their pros and cons, which maybe some of these printing companies didn't realize. And
It was quite a process, actually. Almost printing stones were almost easier the way they had to add chemicals and they had to treat this, and then they had to set up the printing and then roll it, and all these things they had to do just to do one poster, kind of thing.
yeah,
It's just like, wow, amazing the stuff they had to
I
go through.
I started out as a printer in
Oh,
high school, in fact. And so, like, now you're talking about it, that the process is coming back to me. And it was a it was a process, just to get all this stuff. But again, I'm not talking about like 1910s technology. I'm talking about like 1950s and 60s and
yeah.
70s technology that I was working with. So,
Hmm.
but here's the funny thing is that, with the American Lithograph Company, their machines they were using were older. They're at least from the 1890s, and if those machines are taken care of properly, they could have lasted anywhere from 30, 40 to 50 years. You know?
Hmm. Actually, Brendan Ryan had a good question here. He said, I'm still waiting for the pictures to surface from the Hudson River dump of the cards of 52. Uh, is there pictures? Like, is that a rumor? Like, I'd like to know. I've
No,
heard
it's
that
so
story. Yeah, somebody's got pictures. I'll find them. And like most finds, you'll never find the pictures.
yeah. So, um, Cy Berger actually confirmed this. I'm not sure exactly when, probably in the early 2000s, but he did confirm that, specifically for the 1952 Tops cards, they printed so many of these cards that they were still on the shelves up until the late 1950s. And then by 1960, he had a warehouse filled with 1952 Tops and probably other sets that they overprinted as well.
Hmm.
And they
It was hard
rented
to
out.
hear the market back then. How did you know
Yeah,
what was
yeah.
going to sell?
Well, so they didn't, I don't think, in the beginning. Their 1951 Tops bombed, and then they issued the 52 Tops baseball, and it was very popular. But what they did was they overprinted these cards. They were the first series was printed in black and then red. It was
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
different different printing, but then they just overprinted everything, and then they again rented a barge and sailed it into the Hudson with all these cards, and it sank, which because they
It
just
sank or they dumped it.
they dumped it. Yeah, they dumped it.
Oh, so it sank, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah,
Ah, that because
yeah,
it doesn't make much sense. Like, okay, you're going to dump all those boxes. Like, cards are going to float to the top. Like, hey, where all those come from? Well, this company in New York here does come in cards. Like, you know.
yeah. So that was apparently, I think he said it was 1960 that happened.
Oh,
Um,
okay, so it
yeah.
wasn't of that period. Yeah, actually, Parker's did the same thing. They overprinted. Um, I think what they did is they underestimated, then they ran another print run, and then they overestimated. So the next year, from the 51 twos, the uncut sheets that they had left over, they made the display boxes and the box wrappers out of those uncut sheets.
Oh.
Yeah, we've seen the wrappers with the box wrappers, but we haven't seen the box. Now, here, Ronald Villeneuve, he was back in that time period when all of that happened. He was a kid. He said, "Yeah, I could get 3 full cards out of the folded box that were perfect." He said he could cut them out. Like there was more on the card on the but with all the folds and everything on the box. So he said, "Yeah, I could get 3 full perfect cards." He said out of that, and that's
Wow.
he was back in that. See, those are the stories. This is where our mentors come in, is they tell you those old stories, and you don't find that information anywhere. And here's a guy who lived it. His parents owned a grocery store. It was perfect in Quebec, and it's great that I can regale these stories back out into the hobby for people to enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or to say, "Hey, that's cool, that's neat." Like I'm
There
talking.
was
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, there was something about the 1965 Topps hockey set that I was told at the National, in fact, that it's rarer than a lot of other Topps hockey sets from the era. And wondering if you were into
65, 66, or 64, 65. Which is it? The tall
it's
boys, the tall
not
boys, or the just the regular ones?
well, the tall boys are known to have short prints in them, right?
Yes, there was one sheet. Second series sheet was found, and that was like 30 years ago. And your person right here found the other sheet, the first series
Really?
sheet. So I documented. I have actually the video of the unveiling at the Toronto Sports Card Expo in 2012, maybe. So I unveiled it, and actually I tricked the guys at my booth because I had the sheet over here, and I said, "Okay, guys," because we all four of us, we were a group, and we all collected wax and stuff, and we used to make videos of opening packs, old packs and stuff. And but we I said, "Okay, you guys do the unveiling this time." So I gave them the empty box, put a towel around it, and they went, and we got the people around, and we announced it on the thing, and then they opened it up, and there's nothing in it. And then we came up and we said, "Here's the sheet, here's the tall white first series ever known." And that was quite thrilling to do, because we finally itemized the second series, the first series short prints. Now, if you looked at the pop report, the problem is you get a couple stars in there, it'll screw up your total count. You're trying to, because you can't judge stars. But most of the other ones are going, I don't see too many of this regular guy. He's probably part of the short print, so you can do stuff like that. So it is
Is
interesting.
is there a reason why a lot of those cards are short printed?
There's, it's just typical, because if you look at the size of the set, they printed it half and half, and then there was an extra strip along just to fulfill the set, because they wanted to get 2, but they couldn't make enough of 2 out of that, 2 print runs.
Okay.
So, and it's very much like the 65 O-Pee-Chee baseball. They have a set of 283. Where do you get those numbers? It's just like,
Right, right.
and we just took it for Tops, and I think they just got what they got on a sheet, and there's double prints, and there's lots of double prints in that set.
So, the set that I was thinking about was the regular 1965 set with the hockey pucks going
Pucks.
across it.
Yeah.
I've heard that that is kind of a very tough set as well.
I don't know if it's that hard. Honestly, if you do, anybody can do a quick search. You find enough of them online. I don't know if it's that hard. Pre-war, I would say it's easy to tell, but it's very difficult with anything from the 60s, because you can do a search, and it's not like you're getting 5 listings. You're getting 500, of the singles. So I don't think anything is considered rare in that era. Any of those cards, even the
I
51 Parkers, they're type it in.
Yeah,
There's only
I tend to agree. I, I think the 1950s was kind of like their junk wax era. Because those a lot of 1950s cards are not difficult to find, especially
no
baseball.
those doubles, and they're everywhere, even packs of them.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think they were just trying it out. So in 51, Parkers did that, and Pops did that. Obviously, they printed too much, and they had to get rid of them somehow. And Parkers utilized the boxes. Now they made the gum themselves, so they wouldn't, they just not make the gum, obviously. So they just printed, and they bought a cement mixer and mixed all the cards in there for $100. George Kennedy bought a cement mixer, and they threw all the Parker's cards in there in 1951 to get an even mix. So and they went through them.
That's
Yeah,
crazy. That's crazy.
it's gum.
Yeah.
It's the 50s. Like nobody's done
Yeah.
anything. It's like, hey, here's
I
just
mean, were they mixing the packs or the cards
the cards.
themselves?
The cards. So they would come off of the guillotine
Oh,
in stacks of this many Sawchucks, this many Richards, whatever. So they had to throw them in there, and that would mix them up, and then so they didn't seal those packs. They were actually just sleeved, like they were cardboard boxes of the year prior, of yeah. So they used the cardboard boxes. So they weren't tape sealed. There was no wax seal. It was just kind of folded in. So you know,
okay.
to say
Okay.
there is a fine that, oh, I've never touched these cards. You can buy this pack for, yeah, sure.
I'm trying to envision what this would look like. You know. So
It's something
do we have any sheets of these of the 51
no
Parkers?
sheets of
Okay.
the early years. No, we get something in the 50s, later 50s. I think a few sheets. Yeah, but 51, no.
Okay.
No. Actually, there has been a sheet 39 Opeachy, but those are the larger cards, 5x7s. So a few sheets have been found of those, which is kind of interesting. But they're not highly desirable like regular trading cards. But those have been found, but very, very few. There's been a William Patterson sheet from the second year, 24/5, their second issue. A partial sheet is found.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
So I'm not terribly familiar with William Patterson as I should be. 1923, 24. Was there a 1925 and 26 as well? Were there two different?
23/4 was one year, and then 24/5 the next year. So the
Okay.
first year, that one has the big Burt Corbeau short print that's supposed to be the rare short print, but isn't, but it's still respectively. It's such a landmark set. That's why it gives a lot more notoriety to that set. Yeah, so they had I think it was a 60 card venture, and they offered, if you put a set together, a free pair of skates. Now, a pair of skates back then, that was something. So it's offered on the back of the wrapper. So you buy the shop bars, you get the set. So you're getting 6. You got to buy at least, well, not at least 60, at least, to get the right set. But you can trade with your friends and what have you. So, and what happened, the Burt Corbeau was short printed, and a lot of people complained. A lot of mothers and, hey, we've been, nobody can redeem for a pair of skates. So they only wanted to give out a few dozen pairs of skates. So there's only so many Burt Corbeaus. But
Yeah.
I found Burt Corbeaus with the punch mark, so that's how they marked it. When you sent the set in, they would punch hole it. So they got in a lot of trouble. Then they came out the second year, so they realized there was no short print that year, but they added 30 more cards. So the cards went from 60 card set to a 90 card venture, and that's to supplement them for the skates. I'm sure they gave away skates on the second, so we don't know because we haven't seen the wrapper from that second year. But we do believe that they would have offered the skates again. But
Wow.
this time you had to get 90 cards, which is a lot, back then for what they were charging for Chocolate Bar. And then the year prior, 60, but very few people got the skates.
So wrappers are really kind of interesting because they're not really meant to last, and there's so few of them to begin with.
There's only one known of the 1923/4. It's the only
Really?
one. Yeah, only one known. And that's good because it documents everything. It says skates on the back. It's a gorgeous, artistically done wrapper. It's simple, yet it's just beautiful. Orange and blues, and it brings color to the 20s of that the plain black and white cards. That's
Yeah.
why in the 30s, they still had the black and white players, but they made the color backgrounds of the cards, which kind of made them pop. But really, they're still black and white. And they go, no, they're colored. No, not the players. They're all black and white pictures. It's just the color backgrounds. And that was smart because kid says, hey, I want every variation, so 40 card set turns into, 4 variations, 160 cards he's got to get. So that's 160 pieces of gum he has to buy opposed to 40.
Wow.
So it was just marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. So with baseball, you do have some very, very rare wrappers, and in fact, a lot of intact packs don't exist, right? So
There has been a few finds I've saw
Yeah,
in
the
big auction
1930
house,
from what?
big auction house in the last 5, 10 years or something. There was some great huge finds of some
Yeah, there was quite
Shelby,
recently
what's the Shelby gum, and a few others that are bigger, even
with complete pack,
complete
with
boxes.
complete boxes.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I've seen a few of them. There's a Sports Kings. There's a partial box that exists. I got pictures of it in 3 different angles. And that was the first series wrapper, the silhouette, not the second series. So with the colorized picture of the player.
So
Um,
that silhouette goes back to at least 1921.
oh, does it really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It was an ad campaign from 1921 that Gaudi had, and all of a sudden in 1934, it's on their cards.
I learned so much from these shows. It's so great.
Yeah.
But isn't it funny how, in the first series they issue in a wax wrapper the silhouette, and then they change for the second series to a glassine wrapper. I think I was the only one to notice that. As soon as I got, because I bought one, I bought a few over the time because this hockey's related. So I had the wrapper and I went, this is glassine. Why is this wax and why is this glassine? Why is this one full colored and this is the silhouette? What was the big change going on over there at that time? No idea. It's
Yeah.
not really researching a lot because it's not much to dig into, but it is interesting and notable.
Yeah, there was also um, kind of seeing what Brandon Ryan here has to say. 1940 play ball box.
That's
Um,
what it was. Play ball, yeah.
and I just read
Yeah, the
somewhere.
big thick packs.
Yeah, I just read somewhere. I think last week where there was a, a block, if you will, or a brick of
Oh,
1952 tops.
eight. Yeah, the 8 pack. That sold for how many million?
It it was like almost $1 million. So it was like
Almost a million.
800 and like 79,000. But then you have the taxes and all
Who
that other
made
good
those bricks? That's always the question. See, this is where you can find the answers, and that's why we're kind of
stuff.
here, and these guys are here with information too.
Yeah.
Um, like who would brick those up? Was that done in later years? Like 70s?
So the tops did this back in the late 1950s, I think, was
So those
for
are existing
or
from unopened from that time
60s.
period.
Yeah,
Really?
so they would wrap up like blocks of cards, say like 1953, 54, and
Hmm.
they'd sell them later on, like in like say 1958 or 59 or whatever, as like a Christmas special, if you will.
Oh, the Christmas and the fun bags and the stuff they had later on. Yeah, I get
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to see the rack packs
it. Hmm.
of like 86 tops or 85 tops, and I'm wondering if that's kind of like the same thing, or they're just trying to get rid of other like cards that they couldn't sell, or they just have too many of. And I'm wondering too if Woody Gelman or Gelman, I can never pronounce this guy's name right.
I think it's Gelman.
Gelman, okay. So I'm wondering if Woody Gelman was selling a lot of Topps products from his store specifically.
I was wondering about that too. There's a lot going on with Woody Gelman and Cyberger and all these other guys that are early on with Tops because they're just winging it too, right? Remember, it's just a gun company.
Yeah,
They're not making Mercedes. They're it's just scum. So I'm sure there was so many back deals that went on, and I know that happened in O-Pee-Chee and all the other companies. Everybody was doing because it's scum. It's untrackable. It,
right.
things are. How many did you print? Well, yeah, but then half of them got destroyed. You can say anything. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of backdoor deals that were going on.
Yeah. I mean, there was another collector too, or dealer back in the 60s, Bruce Yelko, who is basically, if you ever heard that name.
I heard the last name for sure.
Yeah, so he was going directly to the company itself and buying or being basically a distributor, right, for the companies and a middleman, if you will. And I think he's like actually the first one that I'm aware of that was doing it like that.
Yeah, and that's kind of makes me wonder about we talked earlier about the tops. The American, was it ever issued in America? Well, there was a lot of guys like that were entrepreneurial and would, you know, issue cards, some of the packs in the United States, because everyone goes, oh yeah, I've seen them in New York and this, and I'm saying, yeah, I understand, because they were a kid back then, but there was a lot of wholesalers dealing in stuff across the country, everywhere,
Right.
and especially across the border. Where am I going to get my HP sauce for my steak? I don't know. I'll have to go Hearts of Parliament. Who does the? We don't have a distribution. Okay, so we'll get it up through the United States. There's so many different paths. And there's
And,
lots of different products that came obviously from the United States to Canada. And you guys got all our maple syrup and bacon. That's it.
um, yeah, I'm wondering too now that I think of it, if this didn't happen with, say, Derby cigarettes, where they're found in New York, where they may have originally been in Canada, and who knows how long these things have been actually sitting on shelves or in warehouses and then sold later on. And
You wouldn't know. Yeah.
yeah, and for the original date of, say, the T207 from 1912, I, I I'm starting to think that that's actually not a date it was a date that was given by our hobby pioneers, but I think maybe those cards could have easily been sold through 1913 as well.
Oh, more than likely, for sure. That
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense. So,
yeah,
hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of still a lot of questions. We can only solve so many little things, and we're just trying to find our path here. But unfortunately, there's a lot more questions to answer. And this is the thing. We come out and we talk about these things, and someone say that their grandfather worked here. Maybe I have a little bit more information for you. So, maybe going forward, it might help us a little bit more.
yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of this information is lost because the original printers are long past. And every once in a while, we'll find like an original piece of artwork from the printers in some closet or somewhere. And I've kind of wondered too, with the original artwork from, say, the T206 or 5, or um, even the hockey artwork, right?
Mhm.
We don't have any of that stuff. We don't have anything from the 1930s. We have maybe a few things from this right here, right?
Yeah.
But this is like 1954, and it's the first year, so obviously someone's going to keep it. But we don't have anything from our original tobacco company's artwork,
No.
and
Well,
I'm
the
wondering.
printing stone was found for the C55, right? Or C56
Oh,
printing
there,
stone.
there
I think I
was.
sent you that article. Yeah. The stone was found. It had the back outline. It also had the players' numbers and names all on the stone. None of the pictures per se, but all that artwork was found on the stone back in 2012. My friend found it. 2008, sorry.
So that's really interesting.
That's the only stone that's ever been documented.
So usually, have you seen the original artwork to these
No,
kind
and
of?
you mentioned that before, and I went online to try to look and find some, but I've never really. I know it's done from artwork, but I just never heard of the find, or I've never really looked into it to that degree.
Well, I do have a photo of some original artwork, and I will send it to you.
Oh, okay.
It's yeah, it's exactly what it looks like, except it's just a player
Hmm.
surrounded by white. So it's, I mean, the artwork is spectacular, but then like the whole production of how to get that piece of artwork onto the card itself is something different. And how, like, I'm still kind of trying to figure out how, because a lot of these pieces of artwork are larger than the card, obviously,
Yeah,
3 by 5, or larger than that, 8 by 10 or whatever.
I would
But then
think
they have to shrink it down to get it to fit the card.
technology back
Yeah,
then.
yeah. and it's technology that goes back 100 years plus. So
We'll save that for the next time we're on.
yeah,
I have all
yeah,
those answers for you. Yeah, I got to get running now. So it was a great conversation. I thought I had a lot of fun and learned a lot, and obviously more to look into for sure.
yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And anytime you want to come on, let me know.
I will. I will.
Yeah.
Anytime. You can schedule me for next month. I'm good to go.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it as always. I'll talk to you later. Bye.